budget flop. We have three senior politicians to debate it tonight. Sajid Javid for the Tories, Chuka Umunna for Labour, Shirley Williams for the Liberal Democrats, and Will Self casting a sceptical eye on the scene. Join us at 10:45.
This is BBC One for Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. Now the BBC News with Sophie Rayworth and Peter Levy at 10 o'clock.
A British tourist is named as one of the 21 people killed by terrorists in Tunisia. 57-year-old Sally Jane Adey, a solicitor from Shropshire, was on a cruise holiday with her husband. Islamic State extremists have claimed responsibility after two men opened fire at a museum in the capital, injuring many others.
Next to me, there were two people who didn't move and others who were injured. Everyone was injured.
We've tracked down a friend of one of the gunmen who explains how he became radicalised. Also tonight. The Chancellor rejects claims that his budget plans would mean even tougher austerity for Britain. Illegal immigrants facing deportation from the UK, they're being smuggled out so they can claim asylum and come back here. The polluted waters around Rio, scientists warn that government promises to clean it up for the Olympics are impossible. And will the clouds clear over the UK in the morning to allow millions to witness a near total eclipse of the sun?
And on Look North tonight, reaction to the death of a woman from Lincolnshire who was killed in the terrorist attack in Tunisia. And a report says hospital bosses approved their own pay rises on this man's watch. Coming up tonight at 10:25.
Good evening. The family of a British woman who was killed during yesterday's terrorist attack at a museum in Tunisia say they are devastated. Sally Adey, who was 57, was among at least 21 people shot dead by gunmen during the assault. Islamic State extremists say they were behind the attack, which was designed to wreck the country's tourist industry. Coachloads of tourists from nearby cruise ships had just arrived at the Bardo Museum in the capital near the Parliament building when the gunmen opened fire. Tunisian authorities have arrested 9 people and deployed the army to protect major cities. Our special correspondent Fergal Keane sent this report from Tunis.
4 hours of violence, crime that symbolised the new age of international terrorism. And today, the fearful aftermath, in a country whose position as a model of Arab democracy has made it the latest target of Islamic State violence. At the museum, flowers in memory of the dead, next to where the shooting started.
The remnants of what happened here yesterday are still all around me. Behind me, the cracks in the ground where Special Forces armoured vehicles tried to break through to rescue those who were trapped inside, being held hostage by the gunmen.
47 people are still being treated in hospital. Some are critically ill. All witnessed horrific scenes.
They came in and sprayed bullets around to intimidate us. My foot is injured and a bullet grazed my thigh. Next to me, there were 2 people who didn't move and others who were injured. Everyone was injured.
Sally Adey, aged 57 and from Shropshire, a mother of 2 children, was visiting the museum with her husband Robert when she was killed. The couple enjoying a break they'd apparently only booked at the last minute.
I would like to express on behalf of all the Tunisian people, our condolences, as we say, to the British people and to all the family of the people that are there.
These images from inside the building show some of the havoc wrought by the shooting. Through all of this, terrified people hid wherever they could. Throughout the day, extraordinary stories of survival have been emerging.
I'm really happy to see you. Yesterday I show you a picture, and today I see you.
This Spanish couple, the wife pregnant, hid overnight in the museum basement, terrified the killers were still in the building. We were leaving the museum and we saw how they were shooting the people by the door, said Juan Carlos Sanchez. So we hid in a room where they kept the rubbish, hearing everything and waiting for it to stop. This young museum guide, Aladdin Hamdi, was one of the heroes. He told me how he'd hidden a French family while he sought help from the police.
I don't care about myself. I tried just to save these people, and I going down. I close the room of these French people. I close the room and go down to call the police, and I returned with the police to save these people, and it's finished.
Tunisia is a democratic bastion in a region beset by military despotism, civil war, the threat of Islamic extremism. Yet many of its young men, living in poor areas, are drawn to the radical certainties of the extremist message. One of the killers at the museum, Yassine Abidi, was apparently radicalized fighting in Libya. This man remembers him as a friend who changed suddenly around 6 months ago. He started to hang out with the extremists. Every day he was with them, he told me. They just brainwashed him and he became like them. He used to sit with us, gamble and drink with us. They turned his mind around. This evening, Tunisians demonstrated at the museum, a message of defiance to the extremists in this young democracy's hour of trial.
The government now has stepped up its security response. We're told there have been 9 arrests and the army has been called in to guard buildings that could come under attack. But the biggest challenge facing Tunisia is how to counter that message of extremism reaching its young men. Sophie.
Fergal, thank you. The Chancellor, George Osborne, has denied that his proposals for cuts after the election would be tougher than the austerity of the past few years. The Office for Budget Responsibility has suggested there would be a rollercoaster of deep cuts before there was an increase in spending. And today the Institute for Fiscal Studies said it was unclear where the Chancellor would find the additional savings forecast. Here's our economics editor, Robert Peston.
Quite a ride. Living standards down, now recovering, public service budgets plummeting. Yesterday, the government's official forecasters said that for the public sector at least, the roller coaster would continue. It's in this book that the Office for Budget Responsibility warns that the Chancellor would be on a roller coaster if the Tories were to win the next election. But George Osborne says that no, he wouldn't have to make much deeper cuts to public services than those he's already made because he plans to raise £5 billion from a crackdown on tax avoidance and tax evasion and £12 billion from cuts to welfare and social security payments. But the problem is not everybody is convinced that he would end up raising the promised £17 billion because he's failed to give the all-important detail. The Liberal Democrat part of the government claimed that public services would be on less of a roller coaster if they were still to influence policy after the election.
A plan that borrows less than Labour, cuts less than the Conservatives and enables our country to see light at the end of the tunnel. Not a roller coaster ride, Mr. Speaker, but a steady path back to prosperity.
As for Labour's Ed Balls, well, his budget rules are different from the Tories, and he would cut less than them.
We've got a huge dip in the next few years. It's actually less Wigan pier and more Blackpool pier, the big dipper in the next 3 years. And I think that would be really dangerous for the future of our country. That's why we say a more balanced plan, sensible spending cuts to cut the deficit.
But the price of Labour cutting less would be that the national debt would fall much less. Today, debt is 80% of national income or GDP. The Tories' pledge to generate a surplus in normal years would see debt drop to just over 40% of GDP, where it was before the crash, over the next 20 years. Labour's self-awarded freedom to borrow to invest would mean debt would still be more than 60% of GDP by 2036.
Chancellor, just looking outside for it.
A post-budget tradition. The Chancellor takes out his high-vis jacket and heads for a building site.
Fundamental to a strong economy is control of debts and your public finances. We've now got our national debt falling as a share of our national income. We've got to keep on doing that. We've got a balanced approach to deliver that. Of course, it requires difficult decisions.
George Osborne was waiting for the report card from the respected Institute for Fiscal Studies. On the one hand, it said it is time he spells out how he would cut welfare. But it did provide some support for his claim that living standards are back where they were when he took office.
I think the broad picture is that we're probably on average as well off as we were pre-recession, as we were in 2010, but that's nothing to boast about, nothing to write home about. That's 6 or 7 years of dreadful income growth.
Right, morning everybody. The headmaster's office, the cabinet room, where the Chancellor briefed his colleagues that he now had a date for the end of austerity in 2019. But he probably didn't mention that the economic watchdog he created would describe the journey to sunny uplands as like a fairground thrill ride. Robert Peston, BBC News.
The Bank of England's chief economist